I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Canon. We've been Disney fans our entire lives. And now, as childless adults, we're undertaking a journey through the media that shaped our lives.
Trying to find out if what made them special is still there.
We are
Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
As we are recording this, it is Halloween Day. That kind of sounds weird saying it, but yes, October 31st. And we woke up to a bit of news. Kiki, you want to go into that?
Yes, the famous legend Sean Connery has passed away at the age of 90. Not a huge amount of crossover with Disney, but notable for two things in the kind of greater Disney universe there. One being the thing that everybody will probably easily remember him from. He was Indiana Jones' father in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Dr. Henry Jones Sr. But a little more on the goofy side, he was in the 1959 film Darby O'Gill and the Little People. The interesting thing is up until his passing last night, this morning, whenever, he had been the only surviving cast member of that film. So as of this point, the entire cast of that film has left us. So we wanted to remark on that passing, make note of that, and his small but memorable contribution to Disney.
Mm-hmm. So, let's move on from that. Because when one chooses to walk the way of the Mandalore, you are both hunter and prey. And one cannot be a coward when they choose this way of life. Kiki, during this time, has anyone removed your helmet?
Never.
Has it ever been removed by others?
Never.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This week we are talking about The Mandalorian. The new season just dropped. As we are recording, it dropped yesterday, episode 1. We both have seen it. We both liked it. But that's not what we're talking about today. We are going to be talking about season 1, all 8 episodes of season 1, which pretty much went up the day Disney Plus went live. It's been
the first episode at least.
Yeah, first episode. It's been about a year. Yeah, we're just about getting to that 1 year mark of Disney Plus. So, and again, this show would not exist if it wasn't for Disney Plus, oddly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so let's kind of get our general ideas.
Just so we know, for anybody listening, we will be talking about all of season 1. Spoilers are fair game for the first 8 episodes that aired last year. We will not talk about or speculate on anything for season 2.
No, we will save that for another time.
Yeah, so don't worry about being spoiled if you haven't been able to get around to season 2 yet. We will keep that clear for you, just the stuff that aired last year.
Mm-hmm. So, Star Wars, we've talked about Star Wars before, or earlier this year, the original film at least, but fans have had an odd relationship with Star Wars ever since the Disney buyout of that. While it's has had a more influence on the parks with the opening of Galaxy's Edge and the updates to Star Tours, more and more Star Wars being added to the parks, and the general love-hate relationship with the current trilogy. This has been
the Han Solo movie
and Rogue One.
Yeah,
love-hate relationships. But The Mandalorian seems to be the only thing that Disney has produced Star Wars-wise that has gotten universal praise from all the Star Wars fans. And that does say something.
Yeah, while I will not say that like every person on the planet loves this thing, I've personally never run into anybody that really seems to be like totally against it. At worst, I think I heard somebody say like, well, it's a bit too Western for me, or, whatever. But most people seem to really have taken to this series.
And maybe it has to do with the fact that it has nothing to do with the Skywalker family. That's my own personal opinion.
Which, and I am just going to say this as a blanket statement, I think is a good thing. I do think, I do want Star Wars as a franchise to not forget its roots necessarily, but move away to other stories. Because, like, I think we talked about my feelings on this when we talked about the first film, is that George Lucas, for all his, ups and downs and peculiarities as a creator, created an amazingly rich universe. Every tiny frame of that first film hinted at a larger universe. I mean, we know the names of every single alien sitting in the Mos Eisley Cantina, a lot of that credit goes to the what are they calling it now? The Legends or whatever. The original EU, Extended Universe, Expanded Universe novels, which at the time they were written was the Star Wars canon. That's where we got a lot of stuff, like background on the Mandalorians. We got a lot of other things that show up here and there in the background. A lot of that stuff is being ported over from the old EU novels. So it's fascinating to see how something that, like, George Lucas created at a time he wasn't going to go back into the project. He had said, like, no, I've done these 3 movies. That's all I'm going to do. That's it. Let the people writing the novels carry on the canon. And then when he came around to doing the prequels, he was like, well, I want to use those ideas, but I don't want to pay anybody for it, so it's not canon anymore. And now Disney seems to just be picking and choosing, whereas, like, nothing is officially canon, but everything is open to maybe possibly become canon.
Yeah, and alternate timelines and the whatnot. It's almost like there's a Star Wars multiverse, which I'm not entirely against, but I like the idea of letting any particular writer have free reign to write their Star Wars story, whether it's canon or not, and, let them have their little bit of a vision.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that there's so many ways you can go with Star Wars, and it still can feel like Star Wars. You could have entire shows that are set in kind of the inner core worlds. And those can be very urban, very flashy sci-fi tech kind of shows. And you have things like The Mandalorian, which tends to stick to the outer worlds, a show set on, Tatooine is going to be very different than a show set on Coruscant. Or, you could have political dramas, or, better than what showed up in the prequel, hopefully. But, you could have that.
And we've kind of seen that with some of the cartoons, Clone Wars, Rebels, but again, not everyone has seen those cartoons,
Like me.
but they have taken.
I
Yeah,
have not. Don't at me about it. I just it's not my thing. I might get around to them one day, but this is kind of where I'm at with Star Wars right now.
yeah, and I think that really works in shows like The Mandalorian's favor because you get people who may not watch a cartoon. Like we've talked about this before, how there are people who are going to watch like the live action remakes of these movies because they don't want to watch a cartoon. And you get shows like The Mandalorian and the upcoming Obi-Wan series that are probably going to get more eyes on it because it's not a cartoon. No disrespect to Rebels, no disrespect to Clone Wars, but there are just people that will not watch a cartoon to save their life. No offense to those shows.
Some people are. Yeah, no, some people are very against bringing it into the realm of animation, and we've talked about it before that despite the fact that the idea of adult animation is very popular these days, some people are still seeing it as a kid's medium.
Yeah.
And Mandalorian in the first season, at least, did bring in stuff from the cartoons into the live action for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Even the final film of the trilogy, the new trilogy, brought in one of the characters from the cartoons to be one of the voices that Rey hears to give her.
And I was
so they're tying it in, which I like. But at the same time, you can be someone like me who has yet to watch the cartoons, and it doesn't feel shoehorned in or out of place. One of the big reveals in season 1, I kind of had to go to the internet and be like, why is everybody losing their mind over this? And then they were like, it's from the cartoons. And I'm like, oh, okay. I can just accept that. They'll explain it in their own time on the show if they ever do.
Yeah, and the fact that Jon Favreau has been tied to this for even before it was a Disney Plus thing. Because when it was announced that Disney was going to do several Star Wars TV shows, Disney Plus was not even a thing yet. It wasn't even mentioned. We thought this would be regularly on either on ABC or something. And since then, Favreau was tied to what we thought was at the time was going to be a Boba Fett series.
Yeah, well, they didn't really have a lot of kind of generic Mandalorian stuff to tease this series with, at least live action stuff. So they did use just kind of a generic image of Boba Fett to kind of tease this at first, which gave people the wrong impression, I think, at first.
Mm-hmm.
But I am going to say we got to go back a little bit more because this show did not start with Disney.
Mm.
This show started with George Lucas before the Lucasfilm deal with Disney.
Mm-hmm.
At least as far back as 2009.
Mm.
He wanted to do a series. He wanted it was called Underworld at the time. He wanted it to be just kind of generically about the seedier side of the Star Wars universe. It was going to be about organized
Scum and villainy.
crime. Yeah, scum and villainy. It was going to be about the organized crime segment of Star Wars, which we get quite a few glimpses of in the original trilogy and a few more in the prequels. And so this was his kind of project he wanted to do after after the prequels, to kind of like, well, let's redeem the idea of Star Wars. Mm. They were possibly going to be on ABC. Supposedly he wrote more than 50 scripts, I think is the number I've heard. Mm-hmm. But they were like, no, this is way too expensive for a TV show. And the technology kind of still wasn't quite there to do some of these things in a cost-effective way for a series. So the whole thing was dropped, and then a couple of years later, the Disney deal went through, and it was just an idea that was floating out there of, hey, what if we did a live-action Star Wars series?
Yeah, I mean, several series were teased around the time of that buyout. We talked about, I guess, the Boba Fett series, the Obi-Wan series. There's a few more that I'm forgetting about, but those were the two that stuck out in my mind. And only in recent years that's kind of come back, that Disney was going to go straight into those. And then when the announcement of Disney Plus coming in, and the announcement of Disney Plus original movies and original shows, and one of those shows, and with them saying that these are going to have the same production values as the movies, we saw the announcement of the Marvel shows with Marvel and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, and the announcement of The Mandalorian, these shows having the same quality as their movie counterparts. And that got a lot of people interested, that Disney was about to put that much money into a streaming show that not even Netflix was putting into. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu, probably mostly Hulu, since that's, Disney connected there. The idea that streaming services could have really big, expensive tentpole productions, I think really helped in doing, leading to Mandalorian kind of being a thing. But the other thing, I said before that the technology wasn't really there. And the thing that made Mandalorian affordable is the fact that they are using a brand new, almost like a VR environment. They are using almost entirely virtual sets.
You can't tell. I mean, I couldn't.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing that almost nothing you see on the screen as far as sets. Like, if the character does not physically handle an object, it probably does not exist in the real world.
And it's very different comparing that to the virtual sets of the prequel movies.
Yeah, the prequel movies, there is a sense that nothing is real. There is a sense that the actors are just kind of floating in a void. And Mandalorian has none of that. If you didn't know these were virtual sets, it is impossible to tell. It doesn't have any of the like matte lines of chroma key, green screen or blue screen. Because it's not that. The actors can actually turn around and see an image behind them. So they can always see what they're reacting to. If they put in behind the characters that they're being chased by a group of bandits or something, the actors on set can actually turn around and see a projection of what they're supposed to be reacting to. So it's not like a guy in a green screen suit with a tennis ball on a stick or whatever. This is a very interactive, a very interactive process that is, some people have compared it to like the holodeck on Star Trek or something. Because you can see it. It's real enough for the actors. You can't touch it, but you can react to it. Which is the problem that the prequels had. The actors never knew what any of it was going to look like. They were just told, imagine a future city, imagine, a spaceship, imagine. And
you might have like one of the concept arts on set to here. Here's what it's supposed to look like. Imagine that behind you.
Yeah, but in the new system, they don't have to use their imagination. They can just look behind and go like, oh, yeah, I now know what this, village on some backwater planet now looks like.
Also, the use of mostly practical effects in terms of the aliens.
A lot of puppetry, yeah.
And prosthetics.
Yeah, a lot of puppetry, a lot of prosthetics. Not a lot of CGI on the actors.
Yeah, some of the monsters of the ships, the CG, yeah, but of the characters, let's just say characters.
Yeah,
it's mostly puppets and prosthetics.
Which I love. The breakout star of the series.
Yeah.
Let's just get into the Baby Yoda thing. I mean, Baby Yoda is an incredibly complex animatronic series of puppets.
And the fact that they wanted, even Favreau wanted to have it be CG for most of the show, and a lot of the people involved were saying, no, we like interacting with the puppet and having them stay with the puppet for the entire series. This says a lot of how advanced.
Yeah, and I think it helps the actors as well. That there is a physical thing they can react to, and they can see its facial expression change. They can see, the ears move and the head tilting and stuff like that. So I think that that's probably a really good thing, because there's so many things in this series that could distance you from the acting. I mean, the main character wears a mask all the time,
which you would not have in a regular movie. A lot of people complain that certain superhero movies have characters taking their masks off way too often, and it's FaceTime. The actors want their faces shown on camera. So that's why like Spider-Man or Batman will take their masks off multiple times in a single movie or multiple movies. But for this movie, they made it a big thing that this character will show his face. We see it once, and that's because it has to be, or he'll die.
Yeah. And he almost chose death. I mean, it's made out to be such a big deal that he almost chose death, rather than remove the mask.
Perfect for 2020. Always wear your mask, never take it off.
This is the way.
This is the way.
But not a lot of on-camera actors, at least the big name ones, are good at body acting. They're really good with facial expressions. They might even be good with their voice. But to find an actor that can emote just through their body is kind of rare. And in fact, when you find an actor that's good at that, they tend to become the go-to person. You get people like Andy Serkis or Doug Jones, that their entire career pretty much is acting
Physical,
with their
yeah.
body. It's very physical. And for Pedro Pascal in this series, he has to do it with body movements, and he has to do it with his voice. And sadly, one of the reasons why he was not allowed to be in contention for the Emmy is because sometimes it's not him in the suit, and you never do see his face. I think they need to probably change some of those rules, but also I don't like the fact that it's not always him in the suit, that sometimes they're like, oh, we'll just stick another actor in the suit and you can dub over the voice later. I don't like that. I want there to be a continuity of performance.
I've always heard it was an availability issue, that he couldn't always be on set because of other things he was working on, which is understandable. Maybe don't double book yourself like that, but is what it is.
Yeah, that sounds like a more like an HR problem than, it's like, that sounds like a thing you talk to the agent about. But I want to connect to a single actor, and it's fine to have like body doubles and stunt doubles, I feel, when it be like too dangerous, or the character needs to do something that is just physically impossible for the actor to do.
A fight scene or something like that.
Or, if it's a thing of, they need to like run up a wall and do a flip or something. Like, some people can do that, some people can't. It takes years of practice to learn how to do that kind of thing. I can understand doing that, but a lot of times apparently it was like you said, he was double booked and they filmed around him and just stuck somebody else in the suit, which I don't particularly like. I want them to stop doing that. But let's get into kind of the heart of the series, because beyond the technicals, this has brought a level of like real emotion and deep lore storytelling, I think, that has been missing from Star Wars. Maybe forever, but definitely recently.
Yeah, the story of the Mandalorians themselves, how they were driven to near extinction during the Clone Wars, how even during the events of the original trilogy, they're still being hunted to the point where they have to be underground and their numbers are very small, becoming this pack that has to hide just to survive, and really taking these bounty hunter jobs just to feed their family, essentially. If you want to take a more of a realistic or real world parallel, it's almost, we've talked about before, of the Romani people. They're very much like that, driven to near extinction, having to go from place to place and live in hiding just to survive, and taking these jobs where they're doing these acts that they may not want to do just to feed, just to eat.
Well, I will say it's a little different in my opinion, because being a Mandalorian is not necessarily something you are born into. They do raise children.
Mm-hmm.
They have the foundling system. They take in orphans and all that. But you are given the choice of becoming a Mandalorian or just going about your business once you're old enough.
Mm-hmm. You take the creed when you become a certain age.
Yeah. So it's more more akin maybe to a religion in a certain way if we have a real world parallel. But I think the problem is that they were basically their own military, at their height.
Mm-hmm.
And the Empire just cannot have, you either work for us and you're our soldiers, or you don't exist anymore.
Almost like the Crusades or the Inquisition of the Star Wars world.
Possibly but the idea of, and not to be like the Empire was right or anything, because no, but it does make sense from a strategy point of view. If you've got a group of highly trained warriors, you either want them on your side or you want them to not exist anymore. And it got so bad under that because they can't really go into hiding. Part of the code is, like we said at the start of the show, you have that mask and you don't remove it. I mean, somebody following the code of the Mandalore is very obvious.
Mm-hmm. And there are some Mandalorian characters, again, going into the books and cartoons and comics, that are very loose with that religion. And it's never been explained why. I think it's just depending on how devoted you are to the religion. And the Mandalorian we see here in Mando is very dedicated to his religion.
Well, I think we get the idea that everyone's still existing in the covert network at this point in the story is a hardliner. That they're the real Orthodox Mandalorians,
Orthodox Mandalorians.
That they have the code, they have the way, and it's what keeps them together, because honestly, they don't have anything else. That is their culture. And it used to be the culture of the entire planet. For a while, it seems like it was respected, at least on a wider level, even if not everybody was part of it. And then they were hunted down almost to extinction. And now it's like, it's at the point where they say a couple of times in the first season, I think, that to see like one Mandalorian is shocking. And in fact, he ends up on a planet where there's an entire covert of Mandalorians hiding underground, and nobody knows they're there because they don't ever see more than like one or two in their lifetimes or on the planet or whatever.
So let's kind of get into these characters and the actors to play them. We're about half an hour into this podcast. Let's talk about more of these characters. Let's talk about Mando himself, or as we learn his name, Din Djarin?
Din Djarin, I believe,
yes.
is
Din Djarin.
We really only hear it like once or twice in the first season,
and that's in the final episode.
Yeah.
But everyone just calls him Mando. He has abandoned his true name. He just goes by Mando or Mandalorian. So I guess for the purposes of this, we just call him Mando. Everyone calls him in the show.
Yeah.
So Mando, Pedro Pascal, he is very, very devoted to the Mandalorian way. With the helmet, he even refuses an honor given to him by his little his little creed there, his little covenant, because he didn't have an honorable kill.
Yeah, I liked that at the beginning of taking on the symbol.
Yeah.
of, kind of the big animal kill that he had. And he says, nope, I can't do it because it wasn't honorable. It was, I was helped by an enemy that didn't know they were my enemy. I'm gonna say that I was. Let's talk about the actor here for a second. Pedro Pascal. I think most people knew him before this for Game of Thrones. He was Oberyn Martell in Game of Thrones, and he did such a wonderful job. Very, very different character. Oberyn Martell is extremely outgoing, flashy. He's a playboy. He's a, so if you're like, who does that guy play in a Star Wars context? You expect him to be almost like a
Han Solo kind of character.
Or Lando even.
Yeah.
Very flashy, very much the showboat kind of idea. But I was really impressed when I started watching the series, and he's very reserved and straightforward in his manner, and doesn't play around, doesn't joke around,
He's very much, I mean, you mentioned Western. He's very much like a Clint Eastwood character in a Western.
Yeah, this is absolutely a space Western. We talked in the previous Star Wars episode about the origins of Star Wars as an idea coming through, the Kurosawa samurai films into American Westerns and spaghetti Westerns into that, but in space.
This is going to give me some hate, but I think this show did the Western aspect better than Firefly did.
I think because it doesn't need a bunch of people wandering around in chaps saying, like, I reckon all the time, like,
yeah.
It really, it lets it be what it's going to be. If you're dealing with anything on the frontier, lawless kind of edges of civilization, I think for the most part, it's just going to devolve into what we think of as a Western. So I like that while it definitely knows and respects the tropes of a Western, it doesn't constantly stand up and be like, hey, remember, we're doing a Western. We're doing a Western. Look, he's got, a long leather jacket on, and, they've got their 6-shooters, and they've got cows on the spaceship, it's like, it sounds like we're down on Firefly, which I don't think either of us are. I know I'm a huge fan. So
if it wasn't for Firefly, this show wouldn't exist. But this show is doing the job better than Firefly did. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, because I think it takes the concept a bit more seriously. Is that it doesn't feel like a gimmick. It's not like, hey, what if a Western, but in space? It's just like, yeah, in space, there's going to be some frontier planets. This is, when you get frontiers and outlaws and, lots of cattle bantha,
One thing about Mando that I do want to say about Mando is that we get the impression that he's been doing this for quite a while, the whole bounty hunter thing. And one of the big things they say is, no questions, you just do the job, you get paid, and you move on to the next job. But it's something about this job that he's given in hunting the child, hunting Baby Yoda, that kind of softens that heart of stone in a way. We see him going back to rescue the kid, knowing that, this is just another job. He's probably done jobs like this before. It's just there's something about it being a child that is getting him to go against the bounty hunter guild.
Well, I think also it's the plan for the child as well. I think if somebody had been like, go find this child, and when you bring him to me, he will be, raised in a home with other foundlings, or we're going to give him an education, or we're going to reunite him with his own kind, or whatever. I think that that's a different story. But when Mando shows up with the child and they're like, great, put him in the laboratory and dissect him, I think that becomes a different story then. Because you're not talking about a bounty on somebody who made a choice that led to their fate. If you skip out on payment even to an organized crime family, like, I skipped out on payment to the Hutts or something. Well, yeah, but you did make that choice. You chose to get involved with the Hutts. You knew the risk. Or you're a criminal in general.
It also works with, I was saying, it also works with his backstory that as we learn through the series, how we mentioned before, his parents were killed by droids in the Clone Wars. He was brought in and found by the Mandalorians and raised, so he kind of has that kinship with Baby Yoda, in that Baby Yoda also was without a family. That's the best I can come up with.
Yeah, and we also find out that it's a big part of the Mandalorian code that you take in foundlings. So I think it's also, which code do you follow? Do you follow the code of the Mandalorians, or do you follow the code of the bounty hunter?
Yeah.
Which one of those is more important to you when they come into conflict? And of course, he chose his people rather than his profession. But you brought up an interesting thing about, it seems like he's been doing this for a while. And the interesting thing is we don't exactly know how old Mando is.
No, I mean,
but we do know he was a child during the Clone Wars.
So he was alive during the prequels.
Yeah, at least as a child.
And we are told that this takes place a good 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So the Empire is no more.
Yeah. So he's got to at least be in his 40s, maybe. In order to kind of be the age he was at the, I'm not perfect with math, so don't be like, well, actually he's 39 and a half. Like, don't come at me with that. But, Luke was supposedly what, like 19. So, 20, well, maybe mid 30s.
Yeah.
And we don't know exactly how young you can join into the Mandalorian culture.
We know that he was there. All we know is that when he came of age, he chose the Mandalorian way.
Yeah.
He took the creed, put on the helmet, and that was it.
We're not told exactly what that age is, at least in this series. It may be in some other piece of media, but, in the context of this series, we're not really told, is it a thing of like, you're 13, now you're a man, or is it like, when you hit 18 or 19 or 20 or 5, we're never really told. But I kind of want to take us back to last year into watching that first episode, because if you were like me, and practically the second that thing went live, Disney Plus goes live, and Mandalorian is up there pretty much. I watched this thing at like, 3 a.m. or whatever when it came out. Um, because I did not want any spoilers.
Yeah. A lot of our friends got spoiled before the sun came up that day.
Yeah, it was quick, but of course the biggest spoiler in that first episode is at the end you see what the child looks like. You see what he's been chasing this whole time.
As a good friend of ours, Schaefer the Dark Lord said, he woke up one day and his entire social media feed was saying 2 words, Baby Yoda.
Yeah, and I feel bad for anybody that was like, oh, well, I'll watch it tomorrow with the family, because I cannot explain to anybody who did not go through it. Like, if you're a big Star Wars fan, watching that with no context and suddenly seeing that thing open and there's a Baby Yoda. I freaked out in my living room at like 4 in the morning. My dog is wandering around like, what happened? Is the world coming apart? Why is all this noise happening? I'm trying not to wake anybody else in the house. This is, yeah, that was such a massive, I was immediately online like, I don't want to spoil it, but please somebody tell me that you watched it. Tell me that you've watched it,
And that started a phenomenon. Baby Yoda becomes like the breakout character of the show. There's memes, chicky nuggies, and chalky milk. And the fact that there's like
I dare you to eat chicken nuggets right now and not think of Baby Yoda.
Yeah, and the fact that people were complaining that there was no merchandise with the child on it because they specifically did not want this thing spoiled for anybody. Like, you could get Mandalorian merch with Mando on it and stuff, but you could not find anything with Baby Yoda on it, officially, anyway.
Yeah, for like 6 to 8 months before they were really able to, kind of spin up production.
And we didn't get anything till like January this year was when they actually put it out there, because again, they did not want, even if they didn't plan on releasing it when the show when the show premiered, there are people who just data mine the heck out of store computers, and Amazon and any online retailer will get data mined the heck for whatever new
or
stuff.
Or even just, somebody who works in that line of design and production. All it takes is one person having a sketch or, some sort of rendering of what this thing looks like. So I was very impressed that they were able to keep it a secret long enough for the series to come out.
Yeah.
The fact that nobody on the crew like accidentally let slip that there's a Baby Yoda.
Yeah, we knew what Mando looked like. We knew even before the first image of the show, because of what I was saying before, people just released those images either through toys or people who worked in Disney just releasing it. I mean, a good example would be, we got images of toys of the Eternals that have leaked, and the movie hasn't even come out yet. So we already know what some of the characters look like through the toys. And the fact that they did not do that for Baby Yoda, specifically, because they did not want any leaks, any spoilers. It's smart on them, but then you got a lot of frustrated people who just want their Baby Yoda doll.
Yeah. Which I finally got about 2 months ago.
Yes, because
it took me a while.
The joke being that we were doing the FunFest thing, and everyone, we had a Zoom call for FunFest, just a bunch of us, because they didn't have one for the fans. And all of us are bringing up our Baby Yoda dolls, and Kiki goes, "I want a Baby Yoda doll." Fine, here's your Baby Yoda doll.
Yeah.
Now everyone has.
So yeah, now everybody has Baby Yoda doll. I I was so impressed by that moment. And the fact that they were able to keep it a secret, the fact that and I saw somebody complaining yesterday about it's only gonna be put out once a week, and people were like, "Oh, children don't remember what it was like to have to wait a week." But that excruciating 1 week wait to be like, did I really just see a Baby Yoda?
Yeah.
Um, but let's talk about a couple of the other characters.
I'm going to say this straight up. I know we're not getting to that character yet, but if Baby Yoda had not shown up in that first episode, everyone will be talking about IG-11.
Yeah, that was the one I wanted to talk about next, actually.
All right, let's talk about IG-11, Taika Waititi.
Yeah, Taika Waititi is amazing. I don't know. I hope they're able to bring back like an IG-12 or something.
Well, we've seen IG before. We've seen IG-88,
IG-88
in the original trilogy. So it could be just another IG unit.
Yeah, but I want it back as Taika Waititi because there's nobody better, you know. Of course, him and Favreau having worked on the Marvel films. And also he's such a good actor. He's able to bring the right amount of humor without it being, here's the comic relief character.
I mean, it's
you still believe that IG-11 is a killer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is a weird warmth to him that really brings back something like 3PO.
It's almost like similar but opposite in 3PO. Is like anytime something is going south, I must self-destruct. Don't self-destruct.
Yeah.
And I guarantee if it wasn't for Baby Yoda, everyone would have been talking about, I must self-destruct.
Yeah, he did get his thunder stolen just a little bit, but I like that the IG units are apparently programmed with their own form of the code. I mean, literally a code, but, I like that his number one thing is if a mission fails, you cannot be captured.
Well, because they have information, and they don't want the enemy to have that information, so they just self-destruct.
But I do like that is the basis of the programming for this unit. And I do like the fact of what happens, just like with Mando, what happens when the two codes you live by come into conflict. Well, the same thing with IG-11. Like, you have been given a job to do, protect this child. But at the same time, you're like the most basic part of your internal programming is you cannot be captured. You must self-destruct and not be captured.
And we saw, I mean, for a non-human character to have that level of character development, granted, it's a bit of a forced character development because when we first see IG, he's, again, part of the guild, a self-sentient character who is also given the job to find the child. And him and Mando agree to split the bounty if they both find and work together to get the child. And
the second Mando sees that it's a baby, he's like, nope.
And just we hear a gunshot or a laser blast, and IG just takes it right in the head.
Yeah.
And for IG, and again, it's a fourth character progression because we find he gets taken by the character Quill, or Queel, or Quill. I don't know,
I think
either
it's
one.
like Queel. Yeah. I
Queel,
think it's
Queel.
yeah.
So Queel takes IG and essentially rebuilds him and also reprograms him to protect rather than attack. Even though he has some base memory of what happened, it's no longer his function to primarily kill.
Yeah. Um, I I loved kind of everything about this, but also it does bring up the enduring problem with Star Wars of like, how sentient are these droids?
Yeah,
You know, there's a
that's kind of
lot of ethical issues.
and that's what I'm saying. He goes from a independent character to almost being a servant of Queel. Like he's taking care of the animals, like feeding them. He's being taught to pour tea and almost be a butler, Queel's butler almost in a way. So how much freedom does a droid have?
Well, we know that they have like no real freedom for most of the ones we see. They're always in the service of a, carbon-based life form.
Mm.
You know, the interesting thing is that the IG units are some of the few that seem to escape that fate because we never really know who the IG units are working for. With IG-88, he was just a droid bounty hunter, and same thing with IG-11. We never get the sense that there is anybody other than the client that is directing their actions. But at some point, these are obviously a mass manufactured unit,
Mm-hmm.
which does mean that, like, theoretically somebody is creating them for sale.
I mean, we've
It
seen
does IG-11, like, does somebody go in and say, well, I'm going to, I'm going to buy an IG unit and then send it out to be a bounty hunter and take all of the profits?
We don't know that. We don't know who IG is owned by or works for. All we know is that once he has been destroyed, because of the laws on that world, Quill was able to claim salvage it, and he even says, because of the laws of the planet, it becomes mine.
Yeah, we get the sense that while most droids in the Star Wars universe do seem to be sentient, that it just seems to be kind of like a slave class.
Yeah.
Which is strange, but also that is a thing that we have not really come to grips with yet as a species, At what point does your Alexa become sentient enough that it's a person now?
Or Siri, or,
Yeah, I mean, we're not at that point yet. We're very far from that point, as you know if you've ever interacted with one of these programs. But we're probably going to get there sooner rather than later.
The robot uprising.
But at the same time, though, it is an important thing to think about. We've had problems even believing members of our own species are sentient. What are we going to do when we're creating other sentient non-human life forms?
Yeah.
But I'm going to say that I really enjoyed bringing in IG-11 because much like Mando himself, this is sort of a throwback to what we remember. You know, this was another of the bounty hunters you saw next to Boba Fett when we're first introduced to the idea. And now we're seeing two different characters in that same vein working together.
It also is the character progression for Mando, because Mando, as I said before, he hates droids because they killed his parents.
Yeah.
And he now comes to trust a droid, even becoming friendly, see him as a friend, or at least sees him almost as an equal. Like, towards the end, like, you can't do this, we need you. You know, you're a member of the team, we can't afford anyone to die. And he says, if I live, we're all dead anyway.
Yeah.
You know, the big, kind of skipping ahead, IG-11's big heroic death.
Yeah. I don't think we have to worry about skipping ahead. We're doing this all out of order anyway. But yeah, I did think that I hated the fact that he died, but I did like the way that was handled. You know, by the time he gets to the point of sacrificing himself, it's no longer just like I will sacrifice myself because that's what my programming is telling me to do. It's very obviously a conscious choice he's making as a strategic move.
Yeah. Like, the only way we're getting out of this is if I blow them up and, protect the kid. Here's your jetpack. You all need to get out of here. You all need to live. If you three live, we're good. If all four of us live, we're all dead.
Yeah.
Speaking of another servant, Quill himself. Let's kind of go into Quill.
Yeah, another one unfortunately taken from us too soon.
Played by Nick Nolte, amazingly by Nick Nolte.
Yeah, not in the body.
Though the prosthetics make it look
just the voice. But yeah, the prosthetics do make it look like Nick Nolte.
So that's good on the special effects team. But we learn about Quill being a slave of the Empire. Literally, he was sold to the Empire. And by working as a member of the Empire, bought his freedom. And now just wants to be left alone in his own little hut. And he helps Mando out in finding the child. Even at the point Mando is saying, come work for me. You're a good you're good with your hands. You've helped me. I could use your help with other missions. And he says, I've worked my entire life to no longer be work for someone else. I want to work for myself. And he says,
boy, don't we all know that feeling?
Yeah. He bought his freedom. He even says how he worked for hundreds of human years as a member of either, maybe not for the Empire, but he's always worked for someone else in some sort of servitude.
Yeah.
For hundreds of human years. And it's only before the fall of the Empire that he was able to buy his freedom and just live a private life. And yeah,
But also you know that this is a man who has seen a lot of death.
Yeah. Even
they don't really explicitly go into it, but you just get the feeling that this is a man who has seen some stuff.
There's some post-war PTSD going on in there.
Yeah, and we don't really know exactly what all his job entailed.
A lot of it had to do with his hands. He specifically says a lot of it was with his hands. Maybe as a builder.
But it's like, there's different ways to do that. Was he, maintenance on a ship that attacked people? Maybe he built weapons for the Empire. He feels like there's some kind of guilt there, or
as we see in the later episodes where he's talking to Kara, is like, I worked for the other side begrudgingly, He shows regret but he didn't have a choice. He was a servant of the Empire. If he didn't do what the Empire told him to do, he'd be dead. But he bought his way out. I mean, that's what he stresses, that he wasn't with the Empire willingly. And the first chance he could, he got out.
Yeah, and I really do like the character, and of course his "I have spoken" has become like the second most quoted line in the series.
This is the way I have spoken, and way down the line is I must self-destruct, which is sad.
Yeah. I want to move on. We get our kind of I hate to say this, but we get our woman of the series.
Cara Dune, the former rebel trooper.
Yeah. So I don't mean to say that in the kind of, but it does in the normal flow of the series kind of come off like the Smurfette of the show, it's like
played by Gina Carano, who was Angel in Deadpool.
Yeah. So already kind of connected to the larger Disney zeitgeist there.
Yeah.
Apparently the role written for her because Favreau wanted to continue the Star Wars tradition of strong female character in the sense of Amidala and Leia, but wanted a character that was extremely different, strong in a different way. And they went quite literal with it,
Former MMA fighter.
Yeah. So very physically strong. Apparently does a lot of her own stunts on the show.
Superhero landing. Hell in the knees.
Yeah. But a former rebel soldier.
And that actually gets a little beef with Quill, because Quill worked for the Empire. Cara worked for the rebellion, and Cara kind of is upset about this. You worked for the enemy. How many of my people did you kill? And like I said before, he says that he didn't do it by choice.
Yeah.
And he even argues with her. I bought my freedom with my hands, and I'll show you what buying your freedom with your hands can be like. Kara's big thing is that she has this big tattoo on her arm that signifies her as a rebel trooper, which she does show off, but it probably would have been better if she covered it up much earlier in the story than she did.
Yeah. I want to talk about kind of our bad guy here.
Moff Gideon.
Yeah. Former Imperial, as he still considers himself current Imperial, I think. As the Moff rank would suggest. But still has a group of stormtroopers that are hanging on with him.
Very well spoken in Moff Gideon, but doesn't seem to be very all there. As we see in one of the later episodes, two of the stormtroopers, who have captured the child, cannot even get the word to Moff Gideon that they've captured the child, because Moff Gideon keeps on killing off his own men.
Yeah, he seems both highly intelligent and highly erratic.
Yeah. Well, he just killed one of
Which can be an extremely dangerous combination.
One of my funniest things, one of my the funniest lines, I was like, well, he gets killed one of his own men for interrupting him, so it's going to be a while.
Yeah. Played beautifully by Giancarlo Esposito, who I believe we have talked about before. Mm-hmm. just such a brilliant actor. Probably best known for Breaking Bad. Before this, I absolutely adore him as an actor. Real big fan of his, and he is one of the best villain actors working right now.
Yeah, and the character of Moth, he was he was the main soldier, or the main rank, high rank soldier that put the attack on Mando's people in the first place.
Yeah,
he was there.
He's been around since the Clone Wars. He's one that has given the order,
and knows Mando's real name.
Yeah, because he is stated to have been in Imperial intelligence.
He knows everything there is to know about our trio. We've already talked about two of them in Cara and Mando. He knows everything there is to know about them because of his role as being in intelligence. But he is the one that hires the character known as the Client to hire Mando to find the child. So he's like the mastermind of this whole thing. We're never told exactly why he wants the child. I mean, we can guess because the character is force sensitive, but we don't know the true, his own personal reasons.
Yeah, and of course the other big thing, as I kind of teased earlier in the episode, the other big thing about him is that in that final moment, in that final episode of season 1, we see him holding the Darksaber.
Yeah, when I first saw that, now I too had not seen all of the cartoons, and when I saw him having a black bladed lightsaber, it's like, oh, that's cool.
I didn't even clock it as a lightsaber. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was like, oh, he's got a really cool vibroblade. Because those are different from lightsabers. But in looking up stuff right after I'd finished the episode, people were going crazy over, he's got the Darksaber, which I then learned was introduced in the cartoons as apparently having belonged to the very first Mandalorian.
A Mandalorian Jedi.
Yeah, he wanted to become a Jedi, or maybe he was a Jedi. I'm not the authority on Mandalorians in general, especially not anything that's come from the cartoons.
But it's seen to be held by whoever is the leader of the Mandalorians. So it's implied that he has taken out a few leaders of the Mandalore and has taken that Darksaber as a trophy. We'll have to find out.
Either that, or maybe he's secretly, undercover or something. Who knows? Who knows what we're gonna find out with this character?
Again, season 2 just started. We might find out more. We don't know.
I mean, it is stated, kind of widely that he would be returning as that character. So, I don't really consider that a spoiler. That's been kind of in the casting, for a while there. And he appears in the trailers.
One thing that I got from his entire character that really kind of get something in my mind is I've always wondered how TIE fighters land when not on a ship, and we finally find out that those wings fold in.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. That it works very similar in the way we see X-wings fold up.
But the character himself, again, very articulate, very smart in terms of battle, but I say he's a little erratic. And he straight up kills his own subordinate in the Client just to get to the child.
Yeah. I wanna talk about one last character that we get throughout the first season, and that I have not heard anything about in future, but I hope we get more of. The Armorer.
We might not. I mean, we've seen that the armor was last seen fighting off several stormtroopers that, to make Mando and his crew get out safely. So we don't know her fate. She may have survived.
Yeah.
She may have not. We don't know.
Well, in the true the true kind of idea of, if you don't see the body on screen, they're not dead. I'm hoping that we might get more with this character, because honestly, I love this character. She provides pretty much everything we know about the Mandalorian code.
Mm-hmm.
She
builds the armor, as her name would imply.
Yeah. She is an excellent blacksmith. Herself. And she also appears to be the ultimate leader of at least the group of Mandalorians that our Mando is part of.
Played amazingly by Emily Swallow.
Yeah, I mean, she's just brilliant. But I want to see, if not that character specifically, I want to see more characters like that. I desperately want to know more about Mandalorian culture in general.
Hopefully we can get that as the series progresses. We might learn more. It's implied that there will be more Mandalorians as Mando goes from world to world, seeing other small conclaves of Mandalorians along the way.
Yeah, we find out at the end of season 1 that there are these coverts on many different worlds. That there are these little enclaves of Mandalorians hiding out throughout the galaxy.
I believe that I think Mando calls it a network of Mandalorians that he can probably, because we find out is through the Armorer that we find out that, as the Creed says, when you find a foundling, you are as its father until it comes of age, or you can reunite it with its own kind, which gets Mando his mission at the end of the series to find Baby Yoda's kind.
Yeah.
And we've never known much about Yoda's race. We don't even know a name for it.
Yeah, we know nothing about Yoda's race. We've only seen 2 of them, I believe, in official canon up until this point.
Yoda and Yaddle.
Yeah, Yoda and Yaddle. Yaddle was the pink Yoda that you see kind of in the background in the prequels. But yeah, we don't actually know anything about the race other than a couple of their members are force sensitive, but that seems to be common among most sentient, biological species. And that they live an extremely long time.
When 900 years you reach. Yes.
Yeah.
And considering the kid is only 50 and he's still a toddler.
Yeah. We know that they age and develop very slowly compared to. Which, even if the Mando stayed as his father, what's that going to get to the child to? Like, age 4 comparatively or something?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe there comes a point where they accelerate their growth or something. But yeah, it's a good chance for us to find out more about both Mandalorians, which people have wanted to know more about since their first glimpse of Boba Fett, and also Yoda's species. in general. I love all these little deep dives into the side alleys of Star Wars. I kind of like that, other than Baby Yoda's force sensitivity that he shows a couple of times, we're not really dealing with Jedi or Sith in this.
Jedis are mentioned, and it's still implied that the Jedi are still this unknown, haven't been seen in forever race. And
well, here's the thing, though. The Clone Wars were fought with a vast army of Jedi. They were the peacekeepers of the old regime prior to the Empire. Mando, at the very least, and it is suggested that the armorer is older than him, wiser than him, so, she's probably older and remembers this as well, but they talk about this kind of, mysterious group of space wizards, which, even in the prequels, a slave child like Anakin knew more about the Jedi than people that would have seen them in combat, at least as children.
It's odd how they selectively go with that, but it's part of the thing now. It's
a thing that annoys me about Star Wars in general, because they want to have it where the Jedi are these lauded space wizards who were basically in control of the Republic prior to the Empire taking over. There was a Senate, but if you watch the prequels, the Jedi were running things.
The Jedi's council were on the same planet that the Senate were convening on.
And they were the major military force until the clones were created.
And even then, the Jedi served as generals in that army, which is why he's called General Kenobi.
Yeah. I mean, until Order 66 comes down and the Jedi are hunted down and slaughtered, it seems like it was the known thing that the Jedi are out there. If your child shows force sensitivity, your child will be taken from you. Not a good look, Jedi, by the way. Your child will be taken to be trained at the Jedi Temple, and Jedi kept a lid on anybody who was force sensitive. So the fact that the Force is still talked about by these characters, and yet the Jedi are this mythical ancient race. No, the Jedi kill order came down 25 years before this series started.
And even Amy Sedaris' character says "thank the Force" when she found out that so implying that there are people who know of the Force, which is really weird, but not know of the Jedi.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. It's very, very weird. I get that not everyone would come into contact with a Jedi on a daily basis. But we're not talking about ancient history here. We're talking about living memory of the people. It's kind of believable in the first movie that, well, Han Solo has never personally met a Jedi, so he's never seen anybody actually manipulate the Force, and he just kind of considers it all hokum or whatever, but they have holo recordings.
Yeah.
I mean, we see various points recordings of events that happened people watching back like what almost appear to be like newsreels
Yeah.
of various events, and it's like, you're telling me that not a single one of those is like, and here's the new younglings coming in to be trained at the Jedi Temple, you
It's
know?
possible that the Empire had all of that destroyed, but again, that's going into fan theory.
Yeah, I mean, but the galaxy is a large place and people have memory. Like, at least somebody would be like, no, I remember seeing holo recordings of Jedi from when I was a kid, but that was before the Empire destroyed it all, you know?
Yeah.
And I could get some of the younger people being like, okay, Grandpa, you know? But yeah, it's always been weird to me that Star Wars can't decide whether or not the Jedi were just part of daily life and the normal politics of the universe, or they were mythical creatures that you could choose not to believe in even existed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I do want to talk a little bit about Greef Karga before we wrap it up, since he is part of that trio we had at the end of the series. The leader of the Bounty Hunters Guild, Carl Weathers, amazingly played by Carl Weathers.
Yeah,
And
it's good to see Carl Weathers back. It's like it's been a bit since we've seen him on screen.
Apparently he's set to direct a few episodes for the next season, so that character might come back.
Yeah, I mean, at least behind the scenes, it's good.
Yeah.
Good to see him getting work.
And of course, him getting that do the magic hand thing, baby.
Yeah, that's
Which
a
leads to
a good line.
The cutest GIF that's been shared of Baby Yoda just waving.
Yeah.
But yeah, the character, kind of starts off as a friend and turns into an enemy because hey, you've gone against the guild, and ultimately the character kind of has a redemption when the child saves his life. It's the first instance we've seen of force healing, and which caused this episode to actually air 3 days early because the Rise of Skywalker was opening that same week, and they wanted that episode out to get people to know what force healing was, since that was such a big part of Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. And I think also with the backlash surrounding some of the characters in Rise of Skywalker, especially Rey, unfortunately, I think that they wanted to be like, look, other characters can do this too. This isn't Rey being a Mary Sue. Look, Baby Yoda can do it.
You all like Baby Yoda.
Yeah, you like Baby Yoda. You don't have sexist thoughts about Baby Yoda,
And it's the fact that Baby Yoda saves Karga's life that he just ultimately decides to go against the guild himself, kill his own people, just to say, hey, now I'm going to save this kid's life because this kid's special. This kid needs to be protected. This kid it's more than just an asset.
Yeah.
It's not the greatest reason to have a redemption, but Greef Karga has a better redemption than Ben Solo. There, I said it.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. Yeah, he put his life on the line for the good at the end there.
Even at the end, welcoming Mando back into the guild, even giving Cara an opportunity to join the guild. And we've seen that, at least in the trailer, that Cara comes back. It's not really a spoiler, it's in the trailer. But so we don't know if she's actually a part of the Bounty Hunter Guild or not.
Yeah, I don't know. It was all kind of left up in the air, but we'll find out soon.
Yeah, as the episodes come out, we don't. I assume it's gonna be another 8-episode season. So
yeah,
by the time, since it's like October, by the time December comes around, we'll find out this chapter of the Mandalorian story.
Yeah, I am going to say that I really like that this takes the main idea of Star Wars, which is maybe at least after the first movie. The first movie was kind of its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
But as it expanded from Empire onward, um, Star Wars has really revolved around family.
Mm.
Um, finding family, whether or not it's blood relation or the family you make.
Mm-hmm.
It deals a lot with, daddy issues.
Yeah.
um, in a big sense. And I like that this has a lot of the same themes, but looking at it from a different perspective.
While the original series looked at it from the eyes of the son, where in a way we are looking at it through the eyes of a father.
Yeah, and by the end of the first season, this is his child.
Yes, by the creed. Even if there wasn't a creed, he still cares for this child as if it's its own. As if it's, the
by
Mandos...
the time the armorer makes that proclamation of, here's your quest for the rest of the series, Mando has already been referring to this basically as his child.
Yeah.
They go to the farming planet that they have to protect the village. Mm-hmm. And the villagers are all just like, well, here's Mando and his son.
Yeah,
they're
the old widow lady.
Treat it.
Yeah. And yeah, he's even attempting, it even looks like he might even retire from the bounty hunting guild and just live a life with this old lady, with this not old lady, but this widow woman.
Yeah.
With her daughter.
She's not that old.
I know. It's in my head. Widow means old, but this widow and this child with his own child. Everyone seems to love him, and sorry, if you're a frog in the Star Wars universe, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because Baby Yoda's going to eat you. Just keep Baby Yoda away from Kermit, and we're fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
But I really do like that this series, while it is an action series, mm-hmm. that there is some heart there.
Yeah.
You get the feeling that these are people who are living, all these characters have been broken in some way by the political machinations of the Sith.
Yeah, and that is a lot of the Star Wars canon. Is it, Mando lost his family. He now lost his people because of the Empire. Cara, we didn't mention it, but Cara is from Alderaan, so she lost her entire planet because of the Alderaan. Yeah. Because of
and saw a lot of combat and probably lost a lot of friends.
Quill had a time of slavery under the Empire. And the other Mandalorians having to live underground. Even, we have the one Mandalorian, the gunner, kind of scoff at Mando for taking Republic printed the metal.
Yeah.
Yeah, the currency.
Oh yeah, Republic printed metal because it was taken from their people,
Yes, it was given back, but it's like it has their branding on it, and the gunner doesn't really think that Mando should accept it, but it's it belongs to them anyway. He got it back. Oh, I forgot about the one thing. We finally find out what that freaking ice cream maker is for. All of these years, we see the one guy in Empire carrying around an ice cream maker.
I think that counts as spoilers, though.
I mean, is spoilers, yes, but we find out in this show, so it's like.
moving swiftly on.
Okay.
The 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 fallout of these are people who could not care less about politics or the Force or light side and dark side, Jedi and Sith. They were just people who wanted to live their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And the fallout that comes to all of them, slavery, the loss of family, the loss of an entire home world, the various forms of PTSD, warfare, even like we see in the first season, like with the planet we talked about before, the kind of farming village, are being terrorized by people who have leftover Imperial technology.
Yeah.
That are using it to extort the things. We've got wandering bands of former Imperials like Moff Gideon and his stormtroopers that will not accept that the Empire is gone. They're going to rebuild the Empire from the ground up if they have to.
It's almost like this is the beginning of the First Order.
In a way, this might be how we get to the First Order, this little network of Imperials that refuse to die. But I like that we're finally dealing with the fallout on the average people.
Yeah. Except getting away from the Skywalkers, getting away from the Empire, seeing what this world is like from just regular people who just want to live their lives. And you can kind of put that into reality, take your pick of just people just wanting to exist in this world while this whole political regime is crumbling around them, and it's affecting their lives, but it didn't have to.
Yeah, and they're also not free of it. Even on some of the most backwater worlds we see them go to.
Yeah.
There are kind of scars of this conflict still.
Worlds where stormtroopers are still there. Enforcing
or worlds
laws.
where they've been able to hunt down all the stormtroopers, but their helmets are still kept as trophies and reminders that the Empire is not welcome.
Yeah.
People who maybe are not as interested in the new Republic.
Yeah.
Getting built. It's like the new Republic, at least in the first season. I don't know where we're going with it, but it's like not even a factor.
What are you
in the
doing,
lives
Leia?
of these people.
What are you doing, Leia?
It seems like the New Republic is off in the core worlds somewhere.
We see
trying to solidify power, but they haven't really made it to the sorts of places that Mando and his friends occupy.
See one instance of the New Republic in the prison breakout episode.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And it's mostly them as police, if anything else.
Yeah, but not terribly effective or present ones.
Mm-mm.
If you go certain places, you might run into them, but for most of the series, they're a complete non-factor.
And yeah, there's still a beginning regime. Again, it's only been 5 years since the fall of the Empire. So it's not exactly as far along as one might hope, but it's getting there. And we might see the growing of the Republic as the series goes on. We don't know how long the series is going to go.
Yeah.
And also any future series. If we have another series set in that between trilogies universe, between the two trilogies, the original and Disney trilogies. Or we could have another series set in between the prequel and the original series. The Rise of the Empire and all that.
Yeah. There is a lot of ground to kind of make up here, and we're only dealing with like 3 generations.
Yeah.
Just in general. So you're basically dealing with, I don't know, a good 50, 60-year life span of time at this point that we've seen in the main Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
Without going back to like Old Republic and stuff like that. So I'm really, really loving some of these bits of, like I said, the kind of side alleys of Star Wars, that these are interesting characters, but they're not politically relevant characters.
Yeah.
You could believe that on the other side of the galaxy is an entirely different story taking place with people who will never hear about these exploits, never care about them.
Yeah, it's just there's probably somewhere in the universe that has never heard the name Skywalker.
Yeah, it would be interesting to find that spot, And also the thing that we've not really known at this point in time, at the point in time that the Mandalorian is set, we find out later that, the name Skywalker has become legendary and stuff. But do people at this point in time even know? Or do they just know that there was a rebellion assault?
Well, we'd mentioned the Death Star has been mentioned.
Well, yeah, I mean, blowing up something the size of a small moon, I think that story's going to get around. Yeah. But as far as like, that's Luke Skywalker and his father was Darth Vader, and because it seemed like even in the context of the original trilogy, not many people outside of the inner circle really even had ever heard the name Darth Vader.
Yeah, I mean, the original Darth Vader was taking orders from Tarkin.
Yeah. He was kind of a joke at the start of the first film. The Imperial muckety mucks on the Death Star didn't really take much stock in him until he showed his Force powers. I can kind of understand that if you're not, maybe Cara would have known because she's rebellion forces, and she's from Alderaan. So maybe she would have heard the stories of the great Princess Leia and her, gang of rebels who saved the galaxy or whatever. But how much does that down to the average citizen of this galaxy? And
how many details get lost?
Yeah. By the time that the name Skywalker is legend, is there anything of the real story left?
And that happens in real life as well. Through various histories, people will know the fantastical version of history versus what really happened.
Yeah, and it can happen in a very short amount of time. As well. So I want them to explore more of that, and I want to see things where maybe Mando introduces us to a world and then we get a spin-off on or something.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with the Mando, I I want Star Wars to branch out and to have multiple facets of the same universe. Just like we have multiple facets on this one planet.
Yeah.
You know? A story set in a rural area is going to be different than one in an urban area, is going to be different in China than it is in America, is going to be different than somewhere in Africa, is going to be, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see that diversity really explored in Star Wars.
Yeah.
So.
This could just be, this is just the beginning of what Disney is planning. And if 2020 hadn't been 2020, we could have seen more.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that Obi-Wan is going to be at least half as good as Mandalorian. I'm very much looking forward to that. Even though it will bring us back to, Jedi and Sith and blah, and,
Yeah. Who knows what we can come from? Who knows what season 2 is going to bring? We're only right now one episode in.
Yeah.
But so let's kind of wrap this up since we have been talking for almost 2 hours at this point. Does the Mandalorian have the magic? I'm going to say yes.
Yes, 1,000 times yes. We just talked for 2 hours about how awesome this show is. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, go watch it.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of Star Wars or you're just a fan of Westerns,
I think this is a perfect thing to show someone who may not be into Star Wars. Like, they may not be into the whole movie aspect of Jedi to Sith and all that, and all the space wizard stuff, but just show them this. It's more grounded. It's, yes, there's space. Yes, there's lasers. Yes, there's a little bit of the whole space magic, but the characters are more relatable. The story's a bit more grounded. And
they do a really good job of explaining stuff that you might not have come across if all you've seen is like just the original trilogy, maybe.
Yeah. And I think that's really all we can say about, because you and I can stay here for another 3-4 hours talking about how awesome the show is.
Oh, easily. But, this is just kind of our overview thoughts. This was never really meant to be a super deep dive.
If you haven't seen it yet, please do so. It's, as of this recording, 9 episodes. Each one is less than an hour long. Take one a day. You're good.
Yeah. What else you got going on right now, right?
Pretty much. So let's move on to what we're talking about next week. We will be taking another dive into the Disney afternoon. Last week, our friend Viga made a request, and we are going to be taking a look at Bonkers, the maybe, maybe not series that might have been based on Roger Rabbit.
Yeah. We'll get into that when we get into that, though.
Yeah, so yes, do join us next week for Bonkers. Check out The Mandalorian if you have not yet. It is a really great show and really worth your time to sit down and watch it. And that is all we have to say about that. And we will talk to you all later. This is the way.
This is the way.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Rewatching the Magic. We invite you to keep the magic going by joining the conversation online. Find us on Facebook at Rewatching the Magic, on Twitter at Rewatch the Magic, and of course, find all new episodes at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com. Until next time, remember, the magic is for everyone. It only stops if you let it.